Good evening. This is Greg Kuhn, author of the Why Quantum Physicist book series. I was inspired today by a comment left on another YouTube video about our emotions. And it led me to think about emotions and just how natural it is for anyone to develop or create an illusion of a cause and effect relationship between our material experiences and our emotions. Almost every single one of us grew up learning to apply our lives to Newtonian paradigms. And that's just a fancy way of saying that we learned to do things the way we did them based upon Newtonian science. Cause and effect is one of those Newtonian paradigms. And think of just how natural it is to associate undesirable feelings with undesirable material experiences. I'll qualify a material experience simply by saying that any time-space event, any portion of the material world that we experience in this time-space is a material experience. Let's take a typically bad material experience, like how about we get our bank statement in the mail and it's overdrawn. It's actually -$1. That's probably not going to be a positive material experience for anyone. Well, I open up the letter from the bank. I see that my balance is at -1 and I have bad feelings. Now, I also want to throw another qualifier in here. When I say bad feelings, I'm simply referring to feelings that are not desirable or don't feel good to feel. Now, I'm not trying to pass some sort of judgment on which feelings are good and which feelings are bad. Feelings are just feelings. And imagining a cause and effect relationship, that's a pretty natural and logical thing to do. I see or experience a material experience, and the bad feelings, if it's an undesirable material experience, are very natural byproduct. In fact, I feel those bad feelings so instantaneously that my natural and logical assumption is to associate the bad feelings with the material experience. I associate my bad feelings of being broke, of being a loser, of being a failure, of being unsuccessful with the bank statement that tells me I have -$1 in my account. And if you are someone who has read and studied about the law of attraction, or as I like to refer to it, somebody who is interested in intentionally influencing her material experiences, you probably have taken the next logical step and carried that association between feelings and material experiences to, I would say, the next logical conclusion, meaning feeling bad feelings brings undesirable material experiences to life. It empowers them. It attracts them. Feeling bad feelings helps to ensure that we'll have undesirable material experiences. That is the cause and effect paradigm in full effect. And it's very natural. And no one should ever feel silly or stupid or that they're doing anything wrong if they catch themselves going in that direction. What I want to suggest, however, is that we now know that there are much more accurate descriptions of how our universe really works. And one of the paradigms that we draw from these new descriptions is a paradigm called non-causality. And that's just a fancy way of saying that there truly is no definitive or guaranteed cause and effect relationship between anything in this time space, in the universe. Now, what does that mean for us? Well, it sets us free. It sets us free to begin to use our feelings as information rather than using them to define who we are, to define our worth, to define our state of being, or to associate with material experiences as if they are one and the same, or even sets us free from imagining that we are bringing about certain undesirable material experiences by having the bad feelings. When I open up that letter from my bank and I see I have the material experience that my account is currently at -$1, the bad feelings that I have via that material experience, which I listed previously as feeling like a loser, unsuccessful, a failure, that sort of thing, those feelings are merely pieces of information for me. They are feedback. And the feedback is much like the mercury in an old-fashioned thermometer. Those feelings are telling me that my beliefs, hence the way that I am participating in the creation of that material experience as an involved observer who is an active creator of all of my material experiences. I create them. I am part of the system. I am every bit as much of the system of that letter from my bank as the paper it was printed with, the ink that was used to create it, the folds in the letter that give it its substance and form. I am every bit as much a creator as every other component. I'm every bit as much a creator as the account itself and the amount of money there and the deposits that I've made or not made, the spending that I've done. All of those things. I am an active participant. I am creating it through my awareness and through my observations. And I bring into this moment as I create this material experience in conjunction with all those other factors I mentioned. I bring with me a set of beliefs. A set of beliefs that, if I'm like most people, were given to me when I was a child. Unless I have intentionally changed those beliefs, I bring beliefs that were given to me as a child, and those beliefs are reflected back to me as I create and participate in the material experience. Now, how am I creating that material experience? What are the beliefs that I bring with me into this moment, into this time space as I create? Well, the feelings that I have associated with the material experience are pieces of information that are telling me very precisely one primary thing, and that is whether or not the beliefs I carried with me into this time space are aligned or congruent with my desired outcomes for the material experience that I'm creating. Now, I hope that doesn't sound complicated. It's really just a fancy way of saying that feelings do not cause material experiences. Feelings do not create material experiences. And feelings are not unyieldingly chained to material experiences. Feelings are pieces of information that are telling me whether or not the beliefs that I carry with me into this moment are aligned with my desires for that material experience. Now, does that mean that material experiences are subjective? Absolutely, it means they're subjective. That doesn't mean that my wife and I will both walk out into our driveway and look at our automobile, and I'll see a BMW while she sees a Volkswagen. They're not quite that subjective, or at least I've never yet found them to be. However, when we both walk out into our driveway and observe our automobile, we may be looking at the same piece of metal and machinery, crafted by the same manufacturer and having the same color. We're both going to create that material experience and those aspects of the material experience, but each of us bringing our own unique set of beliefs into that moment, into that time space, will create a unique version of that automobile in our individual universes. That automobile will have a unique meaning and value to each of us that will be reflective of the beliefs that we brought with us into that moment and into that time space. And whatever feelings we notice while we create that automobile in our individual universes will be important, valuable, and useful pieces of information for us, telling each of us whether or not the beliefs we carried into that moment are congruent or are aligned with our desires for that material experience. In other words, if I walk out into the driveway hand in hand with my wife and I see our automobile and I say, look at that clunker. I am so sick of that old thing. Why can't I afford a better car? By this point in my life, I shouldn't have to drive something like that. Those feelings are giving me information about the beliefs I carried with me into that time space, into that moment. And the beliefs that are being reflected back to me as I create my unique individual version of that automobile in my unique individual universe. And of course, my wife, who has walked out with me hand in hand, looks upon the automobile, creates a material experience in her individual universe, and she says, wow, look at that beautiful car. I love it. It's been so loyal to us. It's worked so well. It's carried us places. It's served our family. I'm so grateful for it. I'm so happy to see it sitting out here, and it fills me with joy. And those feelings are telling my wife that the beliefs she carried with her into this time space, into this moment, are aligned with her desired outcome for this material experience. So what does that really tell us? Well, it tells us a couple things. One, we always want to practice and listen and feel and pay attention to our feelings. There's no reason to be scared of them. They're not going to hurt us. They're not going to bring things to life that we don't want. They are merely telling us things. Just like we wouldn't be scared of the mercury in a thermometer. You know, if I felt like I might have a fever and I took my temperature by sticking a thermometer under my tongue, when I pulled it out and saw that my temperature was actually reading 102 degrees, telling me, yes, Greg, you do have a fever, I wouldn't be frightened of the mercury. The mercury had nothing to do with my fever. The mercury was merely telling me whether or not I did have a fever. Well, we often are scared of our emotions, our feelings, in much the same manner as a person who is scared of the mercury in a thermometer. And we would consider that person who was afraid of the mercury in a thermometer a pretty primitive entity. We'd say, my gosh, aren't you silly? Aren't you primitive? Don't you lack the understanding to know that that mercury has nothing to do with whether or not you have a fever? The mercury is merely telling you that you do or do not have a fever. But we do the same thing with our emotions all the time. We assign them a role and we give them power that they are not intended to hold and not intended to have, and they're not capable of fulfilling. Likewise, that this information about our feelings also, it urges us, or it asks us to always acknowledge them, to not pretend like they're something they're not, to not pretend that I don't feel unpleasant things when I'm feeling unpleasant things, and conversely, to not pretend that I'm feeling pleasant things when I am not feeling pleasant things. Why? Because by acknowledging and feeling the unpleasant emotions, I strengthen my connection to them. I strengthen my ability to recognize them and to see them and use them and be able to employ them in the way that they were designed, which is to say that if I walk out into my driveway this evening and participate in the creation of a material experience that I'm going to call my automobile, and my feelings are unpleasant, that is telling me that I should do one of two things. I can try to change the material experience itself, and that's typically, usually, what we do. That's a Newtonian response, and sometimes it's appropriate. If I'm displeased by an angry person, sometimes it is best to remove myself from that angry person. Likewise, if something is dangerous, it's a wise move for me to remove myself from something that's dangerous. That's a Newtonian response, and it's an appropriate response. However, many, many times, that is the least effective response. Although it's a logical one, it's the least effective. Because the source of that displeasure, most of the time, is not so much the material experience itself, but the beliefs that I'm bringing into that moment that are reflected back to me in that material experience and as I create that material experience. And thus, the quantum response, the quantum paradigm response, the response of somebody who wishes to be the most influential she can be regarding her material experiences, that response is to look at the source of those feelings, of that displeasure, and to say, wow, I'm being alerted right now that I've carried some beliefs into this moment that are being reflected back to me, and it's not pleasing. Barring a circumstance like I just mentioned, like a dangerous or angry person or situation, I probably want to begin to intentionally raise my beliefs into alignment regarding this material experience. For that is the only true way I can be assured of having maximum influence over how desirable this material experience can be. Isn't it nice that we no longer need to exert all this energy trying to change everything around us to conform to how we want it to be? Of course, it's logical to do that. You needn't feel silly. I've spent a good portion of my life doing it myself. And it wasn't until I learned to apply my life to quantum paradigms that I realized that by paying attention instead to the source of those displeasing material experiences, and of course I'm referring to my beliefs, I can begin to become as influential as I ever dared to imagine over my material experiences, and to change them literally in my individual universe, to change the very material experiences themselves in my individual universe, is a very real, tangible, possible process. Of course, it's a process that I employ daily, that thousands of people I've spoken with employ daily, and my hope and desire is that you will begin to employ this process as well. If you haven't read my books, I do encourage you to do so, but definitely visit my website. And more than anything else, today, begin to practice feeling your feelings, acknowledging your feelings, pleasant, unpleasant, desirable, undesirable, good, bad, wanted, unwanted, and everything in between. And pay attention to the information they're giving you, not forcing yourself to exert all that energy to try to change everything around you so that you'll be pleased. And instead, paying attention to that feedback and that information that you're getting through your feelings. Begin to intentionally change and raise your beliefs into alignment, into congruence with your desired outcomes for those material experiences. What you'll be doing is, instead of pulling out a thermometer, looking at the mercury and seeing that you have a fever, you know what most people do, or at least people still adhering to Newtonian paradigms, and I say this with love, not to poke fun, but people still adhering to Newtonian paradigms, when they see they have a fever by looking at the mercury reading, if they want to rid themselves of the fever, they take that thermometer and they stick it in a bucket of ice and they watch the mercury go down, and then they say, there, I've done it. I no longer have a fever. I fixed it. The mercury is back to where I want it. Now, that's what most of us do before we begin to play this game that I call Grow a Greater You. I call it a game because it's fun. I call it a game because it's incredibly rewarding. I call it a game because it's, I believe, what we came here to do. And if you have no interest in quantum paradigms, if you couldn't care less about quantum physics, you needn't worry. If you simply play Grow a Greater You, you will be applying your life to quantum paradigms, and you will be amazed at the effectiveness. You will be astounded at how influential you can be regarding your material experiences. Please visit my website or leave me a comment. Let me know how this unfolds for you. Share your successes with me or ask your questions. I'm an active practitioner of Grow a Greater You myself. I play it every day. I love it. I learn more every day. My understanding grows with my experience. And if you begin to play today, I'll be very, very encouraged and happy that you are joining me. And trust me, the material experience I create when I imagine you playing Grow a Greater You alongside me, well, that's a very pleasing one. I know my beliefs are aligned with my desired outcomes, because that makes me very happy, very energized, and very grateful. And that feedback tells me, Greg, your beliefs are right where you want them to be in this time space for this material experience. So I thank you for that, and good night.